I'm Jerome Weeks. How did the experience of a black police officer in the Jim Crow era of Dallas lead to a new show about architecture? Darell Fields is an architect and scholar. His video work has been shown at New York's Whitney Museum, and his new show of designs, The Black Architecture Project, is at Central Track, an artist's residency and gallery near Fair Park. Darell, welcome to Think.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You grew up in South Dallas, and your father was one of the first black police officers in Dallas in the early 50s.
Yes.
What is it about his experiences that led to this new exhibition?
Well, I don't think that there's a direct connection, but maybe certainly an indirect connection to my father's experience as being one of the first police officers here in Dallas. And while that comes with the accolades of being first, it's also quite difficult to cross those boundaries, let's say. So I find myself in architecture crossing a great number of boundaries, and sometimes it's difficult, and I look back on his experience and see that I'm not alone in that, and it gives me pause and courage to keep doing what I do.
But there was something that you found specifically after your father's death that caused you to rethink things.
Well, I was going through his things, and I found one of his portfolios that had a series of mugshots in it. And
this is a little plastic case?
Right, exactly. And I think it's important, at least it was important for me to understand that he had a job to do, and that job involved dealing with people in the community in various ways. But the portfolio was interesting because I found myself as imagining being a part of that collection, and I very well could have been and could be, given the relationship with the law and black males. But the portfolio was also demonstrated a kind of aesthetic potential. It was a kind of archive, a personal archive, and that's what the show is about, is trying to establish my own work, my own archive, and trying to start fresh and start something new.
Why did he have the portfolio? What did it represent?
Well, it was part of the things that he carried with him on his beat, so that if there were any suspects in the area, he could recognize them and call it in.
But he wasn't permitted to arrest white suspects. These were all photos of black suspects.
Black people were only in the portfolio, and that is my understanding, that if he were to encounter a white individual, that he would have to call that in, wait on site, but not make the official arrest.
You've said that this experience has inspired the exhibition to a degree. Still, they're not directly in the exhibition
Right.
itself. Still, there are aspects of South Dallas and black history that are. Could you explain?
Well, I think through my research with the exhibition, I went back to some of old Dallas maps and found that inscribed on the maps were these notations that clearly are about segregation, and that the neighborhood that I lived in was designated as a segregated, officially on these maps, neighborhood. And some of those spaces and places are very specific, and I could go to those places and sort of try to reimagine what that place could have been or what it could be, and started again collecting some of my own artifacts. And those, and when I say collecting, I mean collecting and making things to be a part of the exhibition in very particular ways.
So these were like surveyor's maps, urban maps, and they actually designated colored school.
Right, colored school, colored cemetery, colored this, colored that, and looking at the maps, because these are the first time I lived in the neighborhood as a child and up through going to college. So this is the first time that I was actually seeing these inscriptions on places that I had actually lived in or adjacent to. So it's kind of jarring to reconsider your life in that way. And these, again, are very simple maps, and some of the maps are a part of the exhibition, and you'll be able to see these inscriptions on the very maps themselves.
What else will viewers see in this exhibition?
Well, The exhibition is the Black Architecture Project, and with the emphasis on project because this is a conceptual exhibition. And by conceptual, I mean I'm trying to invent or start something that I believe doesn't exist. I think that one of the reasons I'm here is because it's a quite strange association, blackness and architecture. And I'm trying through the work, through architecture itself, some theoretical, some conceptual, to deal with the gap between my practice, let's say, my artistic practice and my professional practice.
So this exhibition is part of a larger ongoing exploration into the whole idea of black architecture.
Right. I was blessed enough to start a journal maybe in 1993 that started down this road and spoke more to cultural criticism and that sort of thing. And so I'm up on 18 years of this sort of investigation, and the exhibition is actually a critical point in the investigation because it demonstrates my first real attempt to conceptualize and bring this sort of whatever we want to call black architecture into existence. And so these are, for me, this is a very important moment in my thinking about the project.
Well, as you said, the term itself maybe seem puzzling. I mean, how can an office tower be an example of black architecture? But it's a kind of catch-22. There have been very few black architects, so there's no black architecture tradition as there might be in black music or black literature.
Right.
So how do you start this?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to actually acknowledge that it doesn't exist. And with that, the way that, and you mentioned that I was a scholar, my scholarship actually tries to go back into history in very specific ways, looking not for buildings necessarily, but the construction of blackness in aesthetics, which makes its way through, I think, to buildings. And it's a very difficult and challenging kind of exercise because everyone has stereotypical kind of relationships with what they believe architecture to be, what they believe blackness to be. So as I'm theorizing and talking about this project, it's also a project that I hope will allow others to become involved in the rethinking of architecture, the rethinking of blackness, because that's the only way that these two things can come together.
Now, your own designs are very sharp, very modernist, very clean. And you have to ask why, because they don't seem to evoke particular place or history, those sort of naughty kinds of things. Yours are very pristine. Why?
Well, I believe the work is pristine because I'm trying to be precise. And these are very precise artifacts that deal with a very particular place. Now, it's not that the work itself is trying to represent the place. It is trying to come to terms with architectural form in dealing with South Dallas as a cultural, architectonic, urban condition. And so considering the projects in their context becomes a way in which individuals can become more aware of the distinction between architecture and the community, but not so much trying to conflate or allow the buildings to mirror that, because then I think we get into a very tricky territory, slippery slopes about black art, black representation, black architecture, which is not necessarily about the work itself, but is about maybe a cartooning of culture, which is something I want to stay away from. So going back to the point of why it looks the way it looks is because I'm very self-conscious about being being careful about not trying to represent the culture in a very
stereotypical
way. And of course that causes me problems because working without the stereotypes, people don't really know what I'm doing. So, but I think the show actually will engage that, and I hope people will come to see it.
Thank you very much. Good luck with your project.
Thank you for having me.
Read more about Central Track and the Black Architecture Project at artandseek.org. Chris?
Thanks, Jerome. To access our free podcast, you can go to the Think page of KERA's website, kera.org/think. And we'd like to know your thoughts on the show as well. You can email us at think@kera.org. My name is Chris Boyd. Thanks for being with us and have a great week.
To learn more, go to kera.org/think. Think is made possible in part by Dell Services. Dell Services develops and delivers a comprehensive suite of IT and application services, business process solutions, and consulting services designed to help customers succeed. For more information, you can visit dell.com/services. By Southwest Securities, a nationally recognized regional brokerage firm that's been meeting the needs of Southwest investors for more than 30 years. Southwest Securities is a member of the New York Stock Exchange and SIPC. By the Executive Education Center at the University of Texas at Dallas, providing degree and non-degree programs to help corporate professionals and executives stay ahead. On the web at som.utdallas.edu/executive. And by the valued support of KERA members. Thank you. Support for Art&Seek comes from Donna Wilhelm, the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation, the Robert Ted Enlow Family Advised Fund, and KERA members. Visit artandseek.org.